Hey everyone, I am Julianne Meyer. You are watching Own Your Wellness, and I'm excited about today's guest. She is absolutely amazing. You guys are going to love her. And she has a high energy and a high vibration. So we might run into some technical difficulties along the way. Just want to prep y'all, but that means it's going to be good. And before we get started, I have some news. My husband and I got a kitten yesterday. He's a rescue literally off the street. And one of my hosts on my network, her name's Golden, her daughter happened to rescue this little kitten. I found him in the middle of the street, bloody face, just totally about to die. And now we have him, and his name is Walter Cronkette. And I love a play on words. And my husband said he can bring a show about the muse, and my best friend said, well, is he going to have a podcast? So there might be quite a few more cat puns in store for you guys. But anyway, I'm excited about today's guest. Let's bring her on. Molly Rose, welcome to the show.
Hi. Oh, thank you. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm excited because it's not very usual to meet somebody who's been through as much as you have and is thriving. And, I don't like the word survivor and all that. I mean, yeah, you went through stuff. We all do. And I'm not trying to put down anybody's stuff. That's why I say it like that. But what I really want to focus on is how you see the bright things in life and how, you're able to help other people. So I've been talking about you a lot. I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So my name is Molly Rose Holmes. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been a psychotherapist for a long time, studied energy healing, pretty much the gamut of healing from even medical model, traditional types of therapy to, the very, very alternative types. I've had several near-death experiences, so I have crossed over. And during those times in communion with a higher power, Father, Mother, God, universe, Buddha, whatever you want to call it, Christ, it was the energy of pure unconditional love, and it really transformed my life. It took years, and I did have to do a lot of therapy because I had a very traumatic childhood. So it did take time to integrate, those profound experiences with God, with, the higher power, in order to understand how to embody that and to help others find that within themselves. So that's been a long journey, but what I've found by having a specialty in spiritual psychology and decades of being a psychotherapist is that nothing is healed at the root unless it's addressed on the spiritual level. So that's the game changer. So much of medicine, whether it's mental health or physical body medicine, that's the problem right there, is they separate it, right? Because mind, body, spirit is all connected. But it's very much symptom treatment versus root cause resolution. So I'm a root cause resolutionist.
I love that. I love how you put that. It's always been one of my pet peeves. I never want to put down Western medicine or anything like that, but I've always found it like, putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Yeah,
It,
exactly.
it's not the same. It can help, but it doesn't necessarily cure or, make things better in general. So, anyway, I would love for you to share a little bit more about what it means to you to help at the root cause and cure at the root cause.
Yes. So, I think you bring up a really good point, Julia, and you have to know when to use what. I mean, you can swing the pendulum can swing to two extremes of just total medical model or so holistic that people don't want to take action that they maybe need to, that could be life saving. Or, I've worked with, when I first started, I worked in a homeless shelter, and, people were really struggling just to survive and had dual diagnoses. There was so much mental illness, multi-generational stuff, substance abuse, that, for them, they needed to be on some level of medication. There was psychosis with a lot of, it's like to keep them safe so that they could eventually heal mind, body, spirit. So it's, there's an artistry to knowing when to use what. So your question of what's the root cause. So, studying child development and psychology for so long, Um, and I think you'll love this because I haven't really talked about this publicly, and I don't think many people. I haven't found any books on this yet, but studying child development, you look at, okay, what happens between 0 and 12 to 18 months? Like what patterns get seeded if there's trauma during that time? And so, a lot of people in the spiritual community will, talk about past lives, and whether it's their actual past lives or their DNA is what they're thinking of as their past life, since we're all one in spirit. I have lots of past life memories, but is it me or is it the DNA that, my soul came into? It doesn't matter to me which is which, because it's not about anybody's fault, it's about responsibility. If my soul's coming in to this DNA, then I take full responsibility for it, because I'm the one that has the power to make the choice to break cycles and to change things. And so, when we're talking about development, we also then look at what's really happened on Earth's hidden history. And it's hidden. They withhold what really happened. They being, the powers that be. We're not taught it in school. So Earth is much older. Humanity is much, much older. There have been ancient civilizations that were far more advanced, that we don't learn about in school. So, I have memories of those things. And what happens is, if you look at like the development of humanity on Earth, it corresponds. So let's say, when we're 0 to 1 or 8, 12 months, 18 months, it's going to correspond to life in Lemuria. And then, 2 to 3 is going to correspond to life in Atlantis. So, that's how I reconcile the knowing of, oh, how do these traumas, these horrific traumas happen to such little children? Well, I believe it's linking back to those times, there's unresolved trauma in that DNA. So it doesn't mean that, it doesn't justify it. The human mind does it. Karma is such a complex. I mean, we could have so many conversations about that, So
Yeah.
it's not that I could go, okay, this part. It's not about blame. It's not about how we understand it on the human level. Really, it's
Mhm.
about understanding it on the soul level. So, if you're going to get to a root cause, it doesn't matter what happened in a past life, because the brilliance of creation, God of the universe, is whatever is significant and unhealed and is for your soul to heal in this lifetime will show up in this lifetime.
Mhm.
So, that's where you go. Like, where's my deepest pain?
Mm.
The deepest pain will indicate, okay, this is what my soul is assisting me with healing and learning in this lifetime. And that approach is really empowering, right? So, to get to the root cause of that, that's the question that I would ask. Like, what if, first off, we believe everything happens for a reason. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work to get people to go, okay, I can buy into that. It's like
Mhm.
some people might ask, why did my soul choose this? I think that's a tricky question. Because it's not like the soul says, I choose to, have severe childhood trauma, as much as the soul says, I will come in and break the cycle of abuse that's been going on in this family for generations.
Mhm.
Right.
I love that way of looking at things. First of all, it's way more powerful. And like you said, the thing that I just want to reiterate for everybody who's watching that really sticks to me, it's not about blame. It's not about blaming.
Not.
That I think is the piece that a lot of people are missing, or even, this whole idea of taking responsibility. And if something bad happens to us, maybe something like we're assaulted, for example. Well, why did I call that in? It's a little more complex than that.
A lot more. Yeah.
It's not like you're sitting there on some sort of like, oh, I think I feel like this today. And so I love this idea of not, you know, blaming yourself or blaming others for things that are happening. I mean, like you said, it doesn't justify certain things. It doesn't justify, it doesn't, you don't have to agree with it or like it or it, resonate with you, but it's a lot easier when you think about it, not blaming.
Yes. Because there's no healing in blame. There really isn't. Like, I've worked with so many couples, doing couples therapy as a psychotherapist. And it's like they both come in and want, to align with me or whoever the therapist is. And it's like, like pointing fingers at each other. He's the blame. She's the blame. And, like the first thing I'll say is every house is a 2-story house. And we could can sit here and you can, spend a lot of money to try to figure out who to blame for what, but there's no healing in it. And then they go, oh, because then it's like, where do you go then? Like, you have to move in your consciousness after that. Like, okay, if I'm not going to stay in upset and blame, what then? And I'm like, what a wonderful question. Like, okay, here's what's next is, let's look at the holding environment between you and have a deeper understanding of how your behavior affects the other person and what it means to them. Like, and do you know what, when you do this, what that brings up for your partner, and what does that mean for your partner? So it's, it's like, it's a different approach, and it gets to the heart of the matter. I mean, that's
Mhm.
couples therapy, but really we're in relationship with ourselves first and foremost, and God, higher power. So how are you going to heal something at the root? Is it's a simple but hard to do, but it's very simple. If I have to bottom line it, remember who you are as a child of God. All
Mm.
healing comes from that knowing, all of it.
I love that. It's simple and profound at the same time.
Yeah.
So, it just kind of all boils down to one little idea that's huge.
Right. It's everything. So one of the near death experiences I had, and maybe I'll just not go into too much detail, but just give a little detail. So my stepfather was a high ranking Satanist. So I grew up in a family with mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, sexual abuse, torture. I mean, any abuse you can imagine. Like, I experienced it. So you know um and repeatedly. So
Mhm.
because of that, they almost killed me several times. And when I would cross over, like I had said earlier, I would have these incredible transformative experiences with the divine, and I would learn things and I would ask questions. And it was a little bit different every time, but the most significant, profound one, and it's miraculous, I don't have brain damage. It's amazing. I'm a walking miracle to just be alive. you know
Mhm.
and but I, because I remembered, and I kept having a reoccurring dream about this one experience, and it became my lifeline, like literally, metaphorically, everything. It was everything. And it was basking, like literally, in the presence of the perfect peace that passeth all understanding. Like when the Bible talks about that, and it doesn't, all religions reference this piece. So
Mhm.
you can change the vocabulary, make it work for you. I don't care what you call it, because it's not the name of it that transforms you and transfigures you. It's the
Mhm.
energy of it, it's the frequency. It's like, you can say love in 1,000 different languages, but when you feel it, you know what it
Mhm.
is, because you feel it in your heart. You feel it in your cells. It's like, it doesn't matter what language you say it in. So I was in the frequency of pure, perfect peace and unconditional love, and I knew without any doubt in every cell of my body in that moment, being immersed in that I was God's child first and foremost, not my biological parents, that not all the abusers. Like, I knew, okay, this is who I truly am. And then God said to me, you have to remember, you have to remember how worthy you are as a child of God, and teach it to others.
Wow.
So yeah, it took a lot to remember and to
Yeah.
understand what that means. And I don't want to minimize all the healing work that I had to do, and yet every time I just would go back to that, what did that feel like in my body? I rewired myself. I
Mhm.
rewired myself to embody that worthiness, to remember, to mirror to myself the truth, because I didn't get it from parents or family members, quite the opposite. So, because of that, like, I was able to heal all of this. I would just keep going back to that reference point. So, a lot of it is getting to the trauma, because I, repressed it for so long, and then
Mhm.
holding that knowing and that powerful truth of who we really are, to dissolve the false selves and to step into our authentic selves. So that's the, again, the process is so profound, and yet it's the simple answer is, remember who you are as a child of God.
There's two things. One, I want to ask you a question that came from somebody that I told her about you. But the first thing that I'm thinking of is that, I want to mention that you had this profound experience that not everybody has. And yet you still did the work here. So it's the same idea, it's not, it's that pendulum thing. You got to know when to step in.
Yeah.
I think that that is really important because that you helped yourself still and you did do the work to work through those things. But the question that she had, my friend and client, was when you crossed over, did you not want to come back?
That's a very good question. And I mean, look, I'm going to say this. So the personality would never sign up for what the soul signs up for.
Yes.
You know, did my humanity want to come back into a battered, tortured body? Absolutely not.
Mhm.
Was my soul gung ho? Yes, because the soul always says yes. So, in fact, I have a memory of what it was like right before I incarnated into this body. Like, I always remembered this, somehow was able to maintain some memory of this, as a resource to heal all this. And I remember being with God presence and being all excited because the soul is just so enthusiastic to serve. Like, coach, put me in, put me in, put me in. It doesn't know pain. It doesn't know despair. And, it doesn't experience that until it's in a body in that way. So,
Mhm.
the soul's just like, hey, I'm ready to serve. Sign me up. So, here I am ready to jump in. And then I drop into, one of the most abusive families with the, darkest, generational patterns, curses, whatever you want to call them on the planet, knowing, hey, I'm here to break these cycles. And yet, like, once I was like, literally, I had so many times when I was little where I would cry and I would be like, come pick me up, like, get me out of here. I mean, I had a lot of suicidal ideation. I mean, I'm just being very honest, and I'm by the grace of God, like, I was able to remember the crossing over and like those reference points and hold on to them, like I said, as literal lifelines in those really dark times. But it's like my soul remembered. And then, the
Mhm.
reality of being a divine being having a human experience when it's that dark is there are those moments where we forget and the personality is like, oh no, get me out of here.
Uh-huh.
So that's a very honest experience, and I want people to know that because it's relatable, and I don't want them to think that, like, even with those really unique and profound experiences, that there were really dark times. And you know I'm so grateful because one of my most cherished memories is when things were really bad. Like, it was all really bad, but like the torture and the physical abuse and the sexual abuse was like daily, and I was really struggling. And a neighbor moved in. We lived out in the country on a farm, so there really wasn't, there weren't people, there wasn't much around. And then about a mile down the street, someone moved in, and I was like, oh, I want to go see, who our neighbor is, and maybe she has kids, and, just get on my bike. And I went down there, and, her name was Tammy, and Tammy was an earth angel, right? So I knock on the door, and she's like, God told me you were coming. And I thought, oh, okay.
Ooh.
Who's
Okay,
this
so
lady, right? I didn't really know what to think. I was maybe 6 at the time. So, I come in and she's like, let me make you lunch. And I'm like, yay, food, right? Like lunch is great. So I come in and, I meet her children, and she's like, okay, well, we're going to learn how to pray. And I was like, okay, because she was so loving and she felt so safe. And so, and she's like, and I want you to come over every day, and I'm going to teach you how to pray. I'm going to help you. And I'm like, okay, I'll be here. So as often as I could, like, no one really paid much attention. It was like, come, go outside and play till it's, and come back when it's dark, was like kind of the thing at, when I grew up. And so I would go there, and, really weird things would happen. This is hard to believe, but and I used to not talk about it because I thought, oh, this, people are going to think this is crazy, but it really happened. Things would break. Like, a poltergeist type of experience where when we'd be praying together, like, there were energies around and they were not benevolent. And,
Yeah.
like the faucet would flip on and off, like really bizarre things. And I would go, Tammy. And I'd, like point at whatever was happening. And she would never waver. Like she would stay and she would never lose her place in the prayer. And she would say, never mind, stay in prayer. And so I go, okay. So this happened and it trained me. It trained me that like I could stay in prayer when I was being tortured. I could stay in prayer. Like I started to learn how to do this. And it was amazing. It saved me. Like, God sends people like Tammy. Like it's like the synchronicities are there if we open our hearts, minds, and eyes to them. And so, I learned such an incredible skill. And, never mind. I mean, the words she used, like, don't get out of your mind, like stay in prayer. It doesn't matter what's going on, whatever they're throwing at you, whatever they're trying to do around you. Just, if you stay in prayer inside of yourself, it'll be a refuge. It'll be the secret place of the Most High. So I'm so grateful. And then, I learned it. And one day I went and Tammy was gone. I don't know where they went.
Oh, weird.
It was really weird. Like maybe God called somewhere else for another child, So I share that because I want, the listeners to think about, hey, you could be at a bookstore, you could be at a restaurant, like feel with your heart, like God could be sending messages through, or help or support, or just the thing you need to hear in the moment, or the smile you need to lift your spirits. We're all interconnected.
We are. And, here's the thing. Normally we would have to go to commercial, but this is too important to do that. So we're not going to do that this episode. We're just going to talk all the way through. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, I don't.
I just have to tell on a very small level, but this has literally happened 2 days ago with my kitten. That client was saying to me, the same one that asked me about you was saying, so when are you getting your kitten? And I said, oh, we're not getting one. No, I'm not ready, because we had to put ours down not that long ago. And and then she said, oh, well, when you get him, I have something for him. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, he'll find us. He'll find us. That's how it's going to happen. And then that day he came into our lives. So it was just one of those things where I thought, okay, all right, you belong here.
Yeah. And, and it's it's a beautiful testament to your heart and your kindness and your ability to, to see the good in this kitten and in others. And like, I'm guessing that's, a big part of why this is your purpose and why you're doing this. And like, everybody needs that. It's like, we all have a little like homeless kitten inside of ourselves, like our inner child, I mean, mine was very feral when I found, my inner child, and like, I was like, inner child work, even though I'm a therapist. And it's like, it's really like that when there's been a lot of trauma. And love is the alchemist. Love heals. And it's, it may take a little while with a feral cat, homeless cat, but it's like love eventually wins. So it's whatever anyone's been through. Like, part of why I'm here and why I chose to come back into my body more than once is to show people that God can heal anyone and anything. There's no one and nothing beyond redemption. There is not. Like, people talk about the cabal and they talk about, the Satanists and the Luciferians and like all these, the hidden government. And yes, all of that is true. And yet, I grew up with that. And what I learned was, it's many people that are in that, it's multi-generational. They don't know a different way. They have evolved to become very disconnected from the child of God within. They disown that. They don't know how to find their way back. Like, they start getting abused in the womb usually. So I'm not making excuses again. I'm not, I just, it does it. Here's the thing, like the most important, one of the most important lessons to learn is that, vengeance, why does it say vengeance is mine, saith, the universe, God, the Lord, whatever, because if we seek that, then we become like that darkness. Like we start to vibrate at that lower energy. And, forgiveness is for us. Like when
Mhm.
we forgive, we free ourselves from the bondage.
Yeah.
And, it really is about redemption. And redemption, like God's not vengeful. God is supreme compassion. So, we're all interconnected. And, you know, I have probably another one of the most amazing profound experiences I had. Here's me, right? My stepfather sex trafficked me. He tortured me. I hated that man. I will be very honest, I hated him so much. Like, and that hate really hurt me, but I was a child and I didn't know how else to cope with it. So
Mhm.
once I got older and I started to understand what happened to him and what happened to his dad and his dad, and I was like, whose fault is it anyway? Like moving out of that blame game we were talking about earlier
Mhm.
into compassion, into understanding, because I study family systems. Why? Because I want to break these cycles. Like, I don't want to blame, I want to break cycles. I want people to be redeemed in the knowing of who they truly are. So, when my stepfather died, I had this experience of seeing, like, an out of body experience where I felt the presence of what I'll call the Christ, pure, let's just call it pure loving essence, call it whatever you
Mhm.
want. Like I said, it pure loving essence, and I saw my stepfather and I saw him locking eyes with, this perfect, divine, loving being at Christ. And I saw him feel everything he did to me and everyone else through their nervous system, because there's mirror neurons in our eyes. We can feel
Mhm.
each other by looking into our each other's eyes. So he felt, not as punishment. It was not punishment. It was, come home to me, child. It was God does that to redeem us, because once we feel, oh, when I do this and it hurts this person in this way because I was hurt, we don't want to do things like that anymore. So I watched the man, that was my nemesis, basically fall to his knees, weep with anguish at the pain that he had caused. And after that, I was like, how could I hate him ever again? How could I, it's like, how can I want vengeance? Like, that saved me. I didn't want vengeance after that. I wanted to
Mhm.
help people heal. That's how we break the cycle. If we help people come back to the child of God within them, they don't perpetrate on other people.
No, they
If we
absolutely
punish
don't.
them, and we want vengeance, it just keeps it going. It keeps going.
It does. It's kind of, and this is such a small level. I mean, this is for, this is, but was my experience. But I had this stepdad that, he was mentally and emotionally abusive, and me being as sensitive as I was, it was really horrific for me because I had no way to escape, and it was just really bad. But the interesting thing was, is as I got older, I ran into him again, and we kind of, spent a little bit of time together, and I was able to look at him through grown-up eyes and realize, oh my gosh, he did the best he could.
Yeah.
He wasn't,
Yeah.
honestly, he wasn't out to abuse me. Like that wasn't, and that's just how he was. That's how he knew how to be. It wasn't about me, is what I'm saying. I was
Yeah,
just
you're
there.
right. I mean, and that's such a powerful awareness, you
Yeah.
know, for you to have. Like, I acknowledge you for that, because it's like that frees you in that moment to have compassion and to take the power back. It's like, the biggest thing, like when I work with, sex people that have been sex trafficked or sexually abused, which unfortunately sexual abuse is so prevalent. It's
Mhm.
so prevalent. And, the biggest thing is there's this sense of, oh, I'm damaged goods. Like,
Yep.
now I'm worthless. And I tell them, and I look at them, there is no such thing as damaged goods in God's eyes. Like, the soul is inviolate. Like, you are not what happened to you. That
Yeah.
was somebody else's trauma that got passed down and passed down and passed down. And if you choose, the buck stops here, and it stops when you take back the truth of who you really are as a fully worthy, inherently worthy child of God. You were victimized, but you don't have to stay a victim. That's an identity,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I want to reiterate too something for those that are watching, because this was hard for me to really grasp in for a long time, is that forgiveness doesn't mean that what happened to you is okay and acceptable.
You're
it,
right.
it doesn't excuse
It
what
does not.
happened. Like,
Exactly.
but being able to move forward and forgiving that, like you said, is for you. It's not for them. It's for you. So I love that, because I think that that's such an important piece where, it's kind of like, that was the drinking the poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And then isn't it, if you go on a quest for vengeance, you might as well dig two graves or something like that, you know?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I mean, these are all things that, and I want to reiterate something else that you said too. It's like your personality is going to get in there sometimes.
Oh
And
yeah.
you're like, "Rawr,"
Absolutely. In fact, you have to let that's part of the process. Thank you. I'm
Uh-huh.
glad you bring that up because, there's a lot of people that are, in the spiritual community that may have spiritually bypassed some significant trauma like sexual abuse. And, like I remember one time, you know, uh, a woman that I was working at a metaphysical, like when I first started, I was like, I'm very intuitive, very psychic, probably because I crossed over so many times. I mean, these are all gifts that we all have if we develop them. I just, had them opened up and then really spent a long time, studying them, cultivating them, working with them. So, it's like I was that little kid, mommy, I see dead people, because I did. And, she said to me at the time, she said, I know, honey, it runs in the family, but we don't talk about it, and that was very hard for me because I was terrified, and I was like, well, what do you mean we don't talk about it? Like, who's going to help me navigate this? What do I do then? Like, if I talk about it, people will think I'm crazy. My mom won't help me with it. So, as soon as I could get my hands on, spiritual books and talk to people, other people that, could experience, that were clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, like, all the psychic stuff, so that I could start to learn and, learn spiritual discernment and all of that. And, I was really opening up and so much was coming through. And then I realized, thankfully, I had a moment of humility and of true, insight that I needed to work on my psychology first. Like, if I didn't clear my emotional body, if I didn't like let my personality express all that was, like, stored in my cells and shoved down there, that the
Yeah.
law of physics, quantum physics, is such that then I would draw in trickster energies, and that happened. And I realized what was happening. And thank God I was like, okay, I'm not ready for this yet. Like, I'm going to shut this down and go and study and do lots of therapy, like whatever it takes, because I want to be as clear a channel as possible for the divine. And I don't want the, trickster energy matching some buried, rage and hatred and pain and, all the stuff that I would say, hey, I came by that honestly, but I don't have to keep it. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to live in me. Like, I choose not to have it live inside my cells, my body, my life, and I'll give it expression. So, I learned lots of things: somatic, writing, journaling, somatic therapy, primal scream, I did as much as I could. And it's real. The pain is real. So it energy and motion, emotion, like you have to express it. Like, if you're like, well, spiritually, like, I just have to forgive and forget. Well, your inner child needs you to help her or him express first what it was like and clear that energy. Like, you can't just go, oh, this is my spiritual intellectual understanding and now I'm done. It doesn't work like that. I wish, but it doesn't.
I know.
Right. Right. So yeah, like, I started the story. So the end of that was a long, a lot of other things I added in there, but there was a reverend, and she was very lovely, but she said, yeah, my father must have loved me so much to sexually abuse me, and I'm so grateful to him. And I was like,
What?
what? And I thought, and she had a lot of health problems and there was all kinds of stuff going on. And, I was like, something's not lining up right here. Like, and I mean no disrespect to her whatsoever, but it was such a good example of a spiritual bypass. And because I don't, I'm like, that's not how it works, and like, so, I mean, are we grateful? Am I grateful for the skills, the gifts, and the strength and the faith that I have from everything that I went through? Absolutely. But to be grateful to the person who was, who people that abused me because they had unresolved trauma and they were hurting, like,
Mhm.
no, like, do I have compassion for them? Absolutely. So,
Exactly.
it's like, I was like, ooh, ooh, there's a lot of stuff that can get really convoluted in the new age understanding.
I'm really glad that you say that because that's very true. And then it's like, I love this idea of not bypassing that pain, not bypassing those issues because, and I obviously didn't come up with a saying, but I love it that we keep our issues in our tissues. And that
Yeah.
I always think about because, I mean, think about, the cancer and the headache and all these things. It's like, we're so much more than what we put into our body
Yeah.
physically and how we move it. I mean, it's not just that's why like the tagline of the show, there's more to health and wellness than broccoli and burpees.
That's right. Which I love. It's brilliant and on point and true. It's like,
And easy to remember.
yeah. And if we're going to get to the root cause and we're going to have true mind, body, spirit healing and integration, people have to make that paradigm shift. And
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's a big part of what, inspires you and is part of your purpose with the show, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I was really excited when your husband insisted on introducing us, the way he talks about you. Oh my goodness, it's so sweet, and there's no doubt how much he adores and loves you, which I love to see. I love love, and he genuinely does. You know how some men you just see it, you just know it. He's one of those, and I think that that's really amazing for those of you who are watching as well. It's out there. It really is.
Thank you. I feel very blessed. I mean, and I think it gives a lot of people hope because, when I was really young, did I ever think I'd have this with everything that I had to go through and heal and, to be fully loved and accepted with the big story that I have. And, he's a beautiful soul and he's able to see people's true loving essence. And, I had to see my own first, though. It's like that's the trick of it, right? Like drawing in
Mhm.
the one, the soulmate, the whole twin flame thing, all of that. It's like, it's loving ourselves first. It's really being able to look in the mirror, inside or an actual mirror, and I love you, I
Mhm.
accept you, the good, the bad, the ugly, so to speak. And because I know I'm a child of God, I'm a divine being having a human experience, which is we're multidimensional. If we can love it all and accept it all to the best of our ability, like that's where, true spiritual, sustainable goodies come in.
I like that. Sustainable goodies. I love that you said that. I like that so much. You know, um, there's something that I think everybody would love to know, and I I'm just gonna ask. So, I know that there's somebody out there that's saying, oh, it's all fine and dandy that she knows that she's a child of God because she's actually, passed over and had this experience. I don't get to have that experience. How am I supposed to know that? But obviously it's possible. So, what would you say to that person? Because I know you get that.
Oh, well, I get that and I get that. You know what I mean? Because I had to do so much work on myself, like different parts of myself that, like, the part of me, let's just say it this way, like the part of me that crossed over, I had to integrate that experience with the part of me that was like, I don't buy it. It's like, so I get it. And I do have people ask me that a lot. It's like, usually where I would start with something like that is, can you recall the most uh, loving memory that you've ever had? Like, so an experience where you felt the most love, you felt it in your body, your toes curled, like you really felt loved. And, many times it's a pet. So,
Yeah.
pets are such a portal for unconditional love. And, a lot of people haven't had that experience with parents or with humans. So if it
Mhm.
doesn't matter, it's like, if it's a pet, that's fine. It's just any experience. Like maybe it was a piece of art that they saw and they like, saw, like felt like love and God and universe, It's like a
Mm-hmm.
moment in time where they felt part of something bigger, a higher power, and felt a love that in their heart where everything expanded. So, it's like I find a starting point and I'm like, okay, that feeling, that's who you truly are.
Mm.
And they're like, sometimes it takes a while. And I'm like, okay, so that's the truth of who you are. And sometimes it
Mhm.
takes faith because you haven't really experienced it. But if you grow that feeling and you wire your body for that by envisioning it, feeling it in your body, you know, um, breathing it in, and do that repeatedly for days, it's going to be more and more believable. It's going to be more and more embodied. It's like most people spend their day wiring in, I'm not good enough. I'm not
Yeah.
worthy. I'm unhappy. I'm depressed. It's like, I'm not saying that there aren't valid reasons for those feelings. It's that we wire in whatever we're thinking, and then, what our feelings, our thoughts felt in the body. So they're
Mm-hmm.
all related. So, we can wire ourselves to feel ourselves as children of God in our bodies. And that's just knowing we are loved. I mean, that's the simple way. It's not, again, we're not trained to do it. We're not in the habit of doing it, but we're in the habit of a lot of negative thoughts. So if we can wire that in, why can't we wire in the truth?
You know, I had this spiritual mentor for a while, and him and his wife, and they're absolutely amazing, wonderful human beings. They don't spend a lot of time in their bodies, if that makes a lot of sense. They're very spiritual and ethereal. And what I like about you is that you're very present and you're very here and honest about the struggle of it all. Like you even have this exact experience with love, God, whatever you want to call that energy. It's energy, like you said. And yet there's still that humanness while you're here in this body that's like, yeah, okay. To me, that's believable.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you bring up, because again, in the spiritual world or new age community, and I'm not putting it down in any way, because there's so much I learned and so much value to so many of the teachings and the ancient wisdom. But people get addicted to astral bliss. It's like to these states, to these consciousness states. And like, believe me, I did too. Like, yeah, I like to bliss out. So it's like you heal from, like, because I also had to do work in, healing from drugs and alcohol, because I was trying to fit a square peg in a God-shaped hole, which is how I describe it, you know, because I didn't know any better for as long as I didn't. And it took a lot. And I went through a lot of different things on the healing road. So,
Yeah.
you know, you can get, I think it's, what's her name? Gabby Bernstein, I think, wrote Spirit
Mhm.
Junkie, right? Like, it's like, the good thing is about having, any kind of addictive personality is people that have that also have, the other side of that coin is it's like perseverance, focus, dedication, devotion. It's just looking for the right thing in the wrong place. So, once you figure out, hey, I can feel good through meditating, and then it doesn't destroy my life or my body, it's like,
Mhm.
oh wow, it's more work, but hey, this is sustainable. This is the sustainable bliss, peace, joy, love that, that's
Mhm.
on tap, available from God all the time, if we just, choose into these practices that allow us to access it. So, I did do a lot of bypassing, when I basically was like, okay, I'm going to learn all about spirituality. And before I
Mhm.
did the psychological work,
Mhm.
and I didn't even know how much work I still had to do, which probably was a good thing.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like, you took in and allowed as much as you could at the time.
That's
Like
right.
you were ready for that, and that's totally fine.
That's like, yeah, and I'm grateful, because you have to build your spiritual chi. Like, yeah, you
Mhm.
before going into deep, big traumas, it's like I
Mhm.
always first make sure someone has an access point to, their faith, to a resource, because it's like there's a reason that it's unresolved. It's like, the psyche's kind, and God's brilliant in the design of all of this. So it's like, I'm very, very psychic, but I'm very, I listen very closely to the guidance that I get within, whether to, say, hey, did you know that you were abused at this age and you don't remember? Because I can hear people's inner children. They talk to me. So I know, I mean, if I don't like, if, unless someone has invited me, because the law of consent to me is sacred, is absolute sacredness. It's like, if they hire me, they're asking me and I'm working with them as their healer and I have their permission, because that's the only way. Like, and then their inner child will tell me what happened. And my job is then, to help them connect that conscious part of them with the subconscious. And so I'll know what the trauma is, but they may not be ready yet. It may not be a goodness because it might just overwhelm them and they don't have enough, the pathway to the resource to heal it isn't strong enough. It doesn't mean it's not in there. Like, I could not do what I do as a therapist. I could never have healed myself if I didn't know 100% absolutely that God gives us all the resources we need to heal anything. I have worked with I've worked with hundreds of families and I used to supervise other therapists. So I've worked with so many now, like very pathological families with major traumas that have been passed down for multiple generations. Every single time, the resource to heal whatever it is there. The pathway just isn't built. So it's in there, it's built in there. That's the genius of how we're created. So my job is to help people build pathways to those resources. Like, I don't have to give them the resource. God already gave it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. It also helps to feel, there's something that I used to always say, all right, I know God won't give me more than I can handle, but can you please stop? I've had enough.
Oh yeah. I so hear you. And thanks for
But
that.
the thing that I like about what you said too, in particular, is that you don't put it on people that aren't, ready to hear it. It's not like you're forcing their healing on them. I mean, to me, there's nothing more invasive than that.
Yeah.
So,
And
there's
I've
some,
had that. Yeah,
yeah.
I've experienced that like early on in my healing journey, because I, was like, I don't trust traditional therapists and I wanted to only go to like, spiritual healers. And there's, the training now, having been trained as a traditional therapist and holistic and spiritual. It's like, again, you got to know when to use what. And, you don't want to jackhammer into somebody's trauma, it's like it can cause more harm than good, in at least for a while. It's like, listening. And that's why I said that humility, like learning to listen. Are they ready for this? Is this for their best and highest good? Like, it's like
Mhm.
people's relatives come to me all the time, like, hey, like someone's grandma, getting my hair done or something. And I'm like, so I have to tune in, like, will this help build this person's faith or scare them? Like, it's scary to some people. Like, the last thing they need is for me to come up and go, your grandma's talking to me. They're open to it, and that's
Yeah.
happened. Like, I had, a hairdresser who was not she just didn't believe in any of this, but, God was like, now. And the grandma came through and showed me a necklace, a very like unique piece. And I described it to her and she started crying, because to her, then it's real. Like, I couldn't have known that. So, they'll usually give me something like that just to help the person that I'm talking to go, oh, this is real. And she's really talking to my grandma. So, and the messages are almost always the same. Tell her how much I love her, like the love that they just want to pour on us and the ancestors. So it's
Yeah.
like, but somebody that would just go home and be terrified, like, how does that help them?
Yeah, and it's like, I remember, okay, so I've had a lot of loved ones pass, like a lot. And I remember my mom passed away when I was 14, and that was obviously traumatic for me.
Oh yeah.
Because she was my main parent. Like, she'd been there the whole time, and I believed her when she said she wasn't going to die. So when she did, it was like really hard. But after she passed away, she was a huge smoker. I mean, huge. She loved smoking. She did a paper at college about smokers' rights, this whole thing. I remember I was in my dad's house and my friend Becky's spending the night, and all of a sudden I smell cigarettes. And I was like, oh my God, my mom's here. And I was like, Becky, do you smell that? And she said, no. I'm like, well, come here. And it was literally just like right where my nose was. We lived in the woods.
Yeah.
There was no smokers, nothing. I was like, thanks for the visit.
Yeah, and that's real, and it smells
Yeah.
sometimes. And a lot of people that I work with, they'll be like, well, I don't know if this was real or not. And so, it's, I mean, it's, we have to be discerning,
Mhm.
but like
Yeah.
they'll use something like that where you'll know it, like you'll know her by the smell of smoke. It's like that's a characteristic of her,
Yeah.
right? So like,
Yeah.
a perfume smell of somebody's perfume that you recognize. It's like that happens. Images, finding things, like they're always communicating with us.
Songs. Yeah.
Right, right. So, it's all about consent. So it's, that's a big thing, like with everything that's happened in the world the last few years, especially. Like, I mean, the veil's lifting, like that's the
Mhm.
hallelujah. Like people are like, oh, things are getting so much worse. I'm like, no, no, no. The veil's just lifting on the darkness that's been here on the planet for a long time. And,
Yeah.
bring the light to it. So it's, really important for people to understand about the law of consent. It's like, as far as the powers that be go, or it's not real power. So let me just say the elite cabal, whatever you want to call them, some
Mhm.
people running the show, like, clandestinely. If you don't say no, you say yes. And, it shouldn't really be like that. And yet
Yeah.
they find their workarounds with the universal laws, God's laws, spiritual laws. So, it's really being mindful of, what am I in consent with when I eat this type of food? Like, how was it grown? Like, what energy got put into it? Like, I mean, a good example, I know there's probably a lot of vegans and vegetarians. My body, I tried it for 9 years, can't do that. I need to eat meat, but I have to eat very clean, humanely raised. Like, I can
Mhm.
feel the life of the animal. I'll have nightmares about it. Like,
Yeah.
I personally don't really love eating meat, but my body really needs it. So I eat what I need. I bless it because praying over it actually really helps the energy. And then, if we're being responsible and mindful and humane about it, I think that's the way. Like, not everybody can just stop eating meat, and there are lots of people that eat a lot that probably would do a lot better with eating less. So it's like if we can just more consciously do all these things and realize that whatever we buy, we're in consent.
Mm,
Whatever we buy into in our mind that we believe, that's consent. So
yeah.
we're fantasizing about something like, look, we're all human. I do this too. I catch myself sometimes like, like I'm a human. So sometimes maybe like my mama bear gets triggered, and I'm like, somebody wronged my kiddo, or, just somebody was mean to her or something. And then in my mind, I'm like,
Mhm.
imagining like, stopping that, like something, not so great or wholesome or spiritual. And then I catch myself and go, wait a minute, like thoughts are things, like,
Mhm.
even thinking about it means you're in consent with the energy of it. So then grace is a powerful thing. I just go in that moment, I go, oops, oops. Okay, God, what are you doing? Can you deflect, transmute, like
I
grace,
love
like
that.
you're right, because you're gonna do it. Like we're human.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, oh my God, the last 5 minutes I was thinking all negative things. Okay, help. Ooh.
I love that. I love showing yourself that grace.
Yes. Yes. I mean, because God gives it to us, unconditionally and endlessly if we choose it. So it's like, okay, yes, we're going to forget. We're going to fall off the path. We're going to consent to things that aren't so great for people on the planet in moments. Let's just do our very best to, choose to be in consent with the stuff that is the best for people, the planet, and ourselves and our families as best as we can. And then forgive ourselves when we can't, because we are human and divine at the same time.
I love that. And on that note, that is all the time that we have for today. I can't wait to meet you in person. You are absolutely fabulous. I want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been amazing. This is one of the very few shows that I could say I would actually go back and watch. I
Oh,
don't like to
thank
see myself, so
uh,
but I would love to. Yeah, I would love to see this again just to get the more nuggets that I might have missed the first time.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a real privilege. I appreciate the opportunity, and just much love to everybody that sees this, and much gratitude to you, Julianne. Thank you. I am very grateful to get to share this, and I hope that it lifts and inspires and helps people access that truth in it within, that they are children of God. Like that's my deepest, most earnest, heartfelt wish.
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much. And everyone, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your week.